What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Hustle and Muscle podcast. I'm your host, The Muscle.
And I'm also the host. Well, you're the co-host, and I'm also a co-host.
We're both co-hosts.
I'm Chris. You guys know who I am. I am the Hustle. I'm the hardest worker in the room at all times.
It's not actually true, but I allow him to call himself the Hustle.
In this room, I am one of the two hardest workers. Probably top two.
Top two. Yep, I'll give you that. So we've been on a little bit of a hiatus because if you've been following my channel, youtube.com/Kristen Graham, we just recently did a video on Chris's voice. He had surgery, major surgery. He had life-changing surgery because, and it really was because, no joke, this boy could not speak. It was strained and forced and painful for probably about six months.
Yeah, I think it started in like June or July. I had
It was May.
In May?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in May.
May is when you first started noticing it.
Yeah. And then I had a deviated septum fixed. When did I have that done?
That was June.
Okay, that was June. And I noticed it right beforehand. And I don't know if anybody has ever had anything with their vocal cords, but I started noticing at night that it got really hard to talk. And it seemed like it was just at nighttime that it was the worst. And maybe it's because we would go out places that were loud and I'd have to really project my voice and, to talk over the music. And I started to notice I was like struggling to talk and like, it was like super raspy and
veins would pop out of his head to speak.
Yeah. And right before that, I had actually started like vaping a little bit. And so it started right after that. So I thought it was the vape. So I was like, oh, I would vape at night and then I'd lose my voice. So I was like, oh, it must be the vape. And then, so then I stopped and it kept happening. And I was like, oh man, I hope I didn't like damage something by vaping. And so that's what I kept thinking it was. So I stopped vaping and turns out it had nothing to do with the vaping whatsoever.
No. And people were commenting on YouTube too. They're like, oh, it's from the cigars and stuff like that. And when we talked to the doctor, it's not.
Well, we're jumping way ahead here.
Yeah, we're jumping ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we stopped filming the podcast because it got really hard to talk, and I'd have to like almost yell to just get my words out. So it just wasn't fun experience when you can't talk. And so I saw my regular doctor who did my deviated septum, and he's an ear, nose, throat guy, and I told him I was like, it's getting hard to talk, and finally he did some stuff, put a scope down, and ruled out a lot of things, and he saw like a mass growing on my vocal cords, and he's like, you need to go see a specialist. And he's like, you have to go to Charleston. It's a specialist there. Go see this woman. She's the best. I was like, okay. So I called, made an appointment like that day, and they were like, we can get you right in, and this is in like September. Like, we get you right in there, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was probably about September.
They're like, we'll get you in February. I was like, in February? I was like...
The earliest appointment.
I can't speak, and the doctor that originally told me to call was like, it could be cancerous.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's a long time to sit here wondering, do you have cancer in your throat? And
so I'm upset and trying to like keep it in. Chris is like, okay, I guess we just wait until February.
Yeah, and I knew like, they're like, we'll be on the cancellation list. So I'm like, okay. And I figured they would just call in like a couple weeks. Like, we have a cancellation, we'll push up. But that never happened. And then we had a conversation with our friends, PJ Braun. He's the former owner of Blackstone Labs, no longer due to legal reasons. And his wife, Marissa Braun.
Yes.
It's always weird when somebody gets married and you have to like say their new last name.
It's true.
And she was like, well, there's like specialists down here in Florida and Boca, and you're always down here anyway. Why don't you see one of those guys? And I was like, oh, I never really thought about that. I guess in my head, you're just... When your doctor's like, there's a specialist you have to go see in Charleston. And I was like, well, Florida's like far away. So we started thinking about it. And I was like, well, Charleston's a 2-hour drive from my house.
This is girl math, guys.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, I could fly to Fort Lauderdale in an hour. So I was like, actually, Fort Lauderdale's closer.
Mm-hmm. And prettier.
Yeah. And I was like, I called the office and I was like, hey, I live in Myrtle Beach. I was told to go to a doctor in Charleston, but I wanted to see if you could take me instead. And the woman on the phone's like, sir, we are located in Florida. And I was like, yeah, but it's only an hour flight, so you're actually closer. And she's like, that doesn't make any sense. But she's like,
it did to us.
So she took us. And she was able to get us in like within 2 weeks. And we met with the doctor and she saw the issue. And she's like, yep, we can do surgery and cut this out and get it removed and biopsy it. And so I was like, cool, let's get it done.
So we scheduled it a month later. And it was quick. It was like an hour procedure, not bad.
The waiting time for surgery.
Yeah, before surgery.
Which is the most stressful part. Like when you're like waiting to have to go in for surgery, like you're sitting in there in a gown and your hairnet with an IV in your arm. And they're like, just keep waiting. Like,
just pushing
we're going to
the
get you
drugs.
next. It's about to go, but we got to wait. And I was like, all right.
But even backtrack before that, when we saw the original ENT in Myrtle Beach, and he's kind of prepping us for what's about to happen, he had said, you know, you have the surgery, they're going to have to remove it, and you're not going to be able to speak for about 2 weeks afterwards. So that for me was the scariest part, because y'all know me and Chris work together. We're in the house together all the time. Like everything we do, it's me and him. We are a team. And he's like the one person that is consistent in my day to day. So without him being able to speak, it's gonna be a very quiet house. And I had like some people were like, "Oh, it'd be awesome to have such a quiet house." I'm like, guys, like literally nobody to talk to. I'm gonna talk and nobody's gonna talk back. To me, that stinks. I actually enjoy his voice. I enjoy conversations with him. He makes me laugh around the clock. Like I'm lucky. So the thought of him not being able to speak for 2 weeks, that was a part. I mean, other than the idea that it could be cancer, those two pieces, but not being able to speak to him for 2 weeks, I was like, man, this really sucks. Like, he's my person. How do I not talk to my person for 2 weeks?
Yeah. And also when we had the surgery planned, or we were hoping it would be before Thanksgiving, I was like, man, how are we going to go through the holidays? And it was like, originally the doctor was like, you might have to do like, not the one that did the surgery, the other doctors were like, you might have to do like 2 weeks of no talking, and then 2 weeks of like very like light talking, just a few words here and there. And
like speech therapy.
Yeah. And then I saw this doctor, and she was like a specialist in like cancer of the face and throat. And she seemed really smart. And so when I told her, she seemed really confident about doing the surgery, and she's like, you're going to be fine. You could speak. And I was like, but all these other doctors said, you know, I probably can't speak. And she's like, you're fine. You can speak. They're just being overdramatic. And I was like, oh, really? And she's like, you'll be fine.
It was like no singing, no screaming, no high pitchy sounds.
Yeah. She's like, just don't sing. I was like, I won't sing. I was like, can you tell my wife she can't sing also?
You're an ass.
But yeah, they did after surgery. They kept like, all the nurses were pushing me. They're like, remember, no singing. And I was like, I'm not a singer. Like, what?
You would think we went in there and was like, Chris is going to be a singer. Yeah. So
I do have the voice of an angel, but I just choose not to sing.
Well, you can rap.
I do the 1-900 numbers. When you call there at night and they charge you $9 a minute, that's me that you're speaking to. Yeah, so that's why we haven't been filming podcasts. Yeah. But now that I can speak again, and I can like relax and comfortably talk, it feels really good.
Well, do you want to tell them that it's not the C word?
Oh, it's not cancer. Yeah,
it's not cancer.
Surprise.
Surprise. This is good.
They did. They called me with the biopsy. They're like, it's benign. And I was like, is that good or bad? Which one's benign? She's like, that means no cancer. I was like, oh, just say that. Yeah,
just lead with that. But they said it was a nodule. It's a fluke thing. Could be from like strain. And we were actually talking about it. And it was like when we go to these like MMA fights or bare knuckle fights and stuff, like you could hear his voice from across the arena. No microphone. Like his voice just goes. And then on the competition floor, you figure I've competed for years, since like 2014, even like 2013 a little bit, through 2023, 2022. Chris was at every single competition, and you could hear him from, it didn't matter where it was. You were at the Arnold, you could hear him on the other side of the expo center. Like, he is loud.
I'm glad you're taking ownership and saying that this is your fault.
It could be my fault. And like the little things like that, like you try and figure out where it happened. Like, it's not just from like cheering at a football game. Like, this is like
years of abuse.
Spousal
abuse.
It's not spousal abuse.
Feels like it.
This is not a domestic dispute. Now we are domestically disputing.
We'll let them decide.
But so I'm thinking like that's when she said it was like from like this outrageous strain that he's had on his vocal cords. I'm thinking it's from like competition, stuff like that. Things that he really projected his voice, and then he would like lose it. So for like days after competition, you had no voice. I'm competing and he's crying. So
she's like, do you have a lot of strain and stress in your life? I was like,
no, he's very happy. You're so happy, aren't you, hon? I keep telling him how happy he is.
Yeah. So I was playing Fortnite, and the doctor called. So I was like, oh crap. So I'm like in the middle of playing, and I like hit speakerphone. I was like, what? She's like, it's Benign. I was like, all right, bye. So I hung up, and then Kristen was downstairs training clients in the garage. So I just texted her, and I was like, the doctor called. Come up here. I forgot she was training clients. So then I went back to like, I just put my phone on the bed and I was playing Fortnite again. And then like after like 2 rounds of it, I looked down at my phone and there's like a bunch of texts from Kristen. She's
I
like,
was so
I'm training
upset.
clients. What's the matter? Because she was like waiting for this phone call also. And she's like, text me back. She's like, I'm downstairs with the clients. She's like, tell me what's happening. And I looked in, I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's not cancer.
I was so mad. Like, I'm usually like chatty and like fun, I think, to be around. My clients will vouch for that. Like, I communicate, we laugh, we chit chat, whatever while I'm training them. I make light of the fact
I was laughing.
that I'm beating the hell out of them for 45 minutes. But I was so quiet because I was like waiting and nervous and whatever. And then he finally texted me back and I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I haven't like said a word. This is what just happened. And the client I was with knows Chris. So she's like, oh my God, what an ass. And I was like, yeah, you're telling me.
I'm not an ass. I was just playing Fortnite.
No, you're an ass. Comment below. Call him an ass.
Your gamer tags. Comment that below. What do we have? Xbox?
We have Xbox. I don't play Xbox.
I don't even know what my gamer tag is.
I don't even know what a gamer tag is.
I'd have to ask my daughter. Yeah, so now we're back. So that's it. That's the short and long story of why we haven't been putting out episodes. But now we're back. So if there's anybody that you want us to see, if you want us to interview or have on the episodes to talk about anything, or if there's any events or topics that you want us to cover, comment them down below so we have some kind of idea. It's fun when you guys say like, hey, talk about this or talk about this more. And then it gives us an idea. Because sometimes we sit here and we're like, what should we talk about?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so give us ideas in the comments below.
Yep.
Let us know.
So that's it. That's it for this this episode. Just letting you guys know we're back and why we've been missing in case you missed it. So, and my throat's better and I don't have cancer for now.
So this is all good news.
Yep. So I'm back.
Right.
We're back.
We're back. We're back, guys.
Bye.
See you later.